Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. It's going to be an interesting little conversation. We're going to have us on the show today. I think we're continuing in the dynasty that The Breakdown has in interviewing provincial party leaders. And this is a fascinating little piece of Alberta history that we're going to be playing with. The party leader that we're going to be speaking to is leading the longest standing, oldest provincial political party in the province of Alberta. They were the first party to form government, so many years ago in the 1905s and 6s, and for a little while after that. We're very, very excited to welcome to the show Alberta Liberal Party leader John Roggeveen. Roggeveen.
Yeah, the second one was a little
He gave me
closer
both pronunciations.
yeah. So it's those hard G's. It's you can blame the Dutch.
There we go. First of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, John, because it's been certainly a simultaneously dynamic and yet not period of time for the Liberals for the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been trying to rebuild as best we can. It's a process for sure, and it's a lengthy process. I wish it would go faster than it is, but it is what it is. I mean, there's been a lot of things to deal with. Elections got in the way and things like that too, and so we're working on it, and we'll keep working on it.
Now, we're going to talk a bit about the working on it and keeping working on it in a bit. But before we do, one of the things that we always like to try to do is learn a little bit more about the people who are coming on to the show. So I'm going to start with the very broad and basic question. You can answer as lengthy or not as you choose to. Who is John Roggeveen?
Okay, well, I'd like to say I'm a lifetime Albertan, although I'm not sure that's exactly correct either. My parents are both born in Alberta. My brothers are both born in Alberta. I happen to have been born in Vancouver. My dad was playing hockey at the time out there. I don't know if it was the Vancouver Canucks or the New Westminster Royals, but he was playing for them out there when I was born. And but I've lived most of my life in Alberta. Other than going to law school in British Columbia. Most of my life has been spent in Alberta. We traveled around a bit, as my dad was a bit of an itinerant hockey player when I was younger, but don't have great recollections of that. Grew up on the north end of Edmonton. So Edmonton remains near and dear to my heart, as well as Calgary, where I've lived for the last probably close to 40 years now. Went to high school in Edmonton, went to the U of A, got my first degree there, went to law school in Victoria, and have been practicing in law in Calgary. I got a job in Calgary to article there, and practiced law there since. Started a big firm, went to a more medium-sized firm, and I'm now sole practitioner lawyer with a general practice. Kind of keeps me busy, and in the middle of renovations to the house, as you saw before we got on the air, and pretty much other than that, a regular guy, I guess. If you've got any questions in particular, I'd be happy to answer them.
So let's start with so your father was a hockey player.
Yeah.
It seems like it's maybe a bit of a jump from hockey playing to politics. How did you first get involved in politics, and have you always been with the Liberals?
Well, I mean, I've always been interested in politics. I think my dad was as well. I mean, just because he was a hockey player doesn't mean he didn't have other interests. We always had good discussions. My family, my extended family, I would say that we have pretty broad political views. My uncle was quite conservative. I had another uncle that was quite liberal. My dad sometimes was even further to the left than him. And so, we've had some pretty good discussions about different political views over the years. And, I think that's what probably set things on track for me to be involved in political life. I've always been interested in what will work for Albertans. Sorry, I thought I had turned my phone off. Let me do that. There. Anyway, sorry about that. I've always been interested in political life. Not that I studied political science in university or anything like that. It wasn't a star in the times that I took personal political science courses and things like that. But I've always been interested in it. I guess what I would say is I went from being sort of an independent, not really well-defined person my younger years, gradually coming to learn that really I fit with the liberal philosophy and liberal values, and so became more involved with the Alberta Liberals, probably a little bit when the Getty regime was in power, and then took a little bit of a hiatus for a few years when my family was young, and got more involved in probably 2003, 2004, around then, and have been involved ever since.
Now, what were you doing prior to, let's go, I'll just choose a date out of nowhere, March 6, 2021. What was your role with the Alberta Liberals prior to that?
Well, I've had different roles with the Alberta Liberals. I was, at that time, I was the vice president of, I think it was constituencies officially, vice president of organizations. And then I stepped up to be the interim leader. Before that, I've had roles, working as a fundraiser and for the Alberta Liberals. I've been a constituency president. I've been a candidate on the ballot in every election since 2004. I've been on the ballot for the Alberta Liberals. Sometimes I've campaigned hard for myself, and sometimes I've campaigned hard for the leader. And sometimes just carried the flag. And so it's been different experiences in different elections. But I've always been there because I know that Albertans really need to have choices in their democracy. And so that's really what motivated me to step up and be the interim leader, was that we need to continue to have the option of choosing other parties other than the ones that are in power, and even the opposition, frankly.
So March 6, 2021, you become the interim leader. The party announces there's going to be a leadership race. You have to know where I'm going from here. The Alberta Liberals did, in fact, announce a leadership race, and it seemed like, by all accounts, it was the party that nobody came to. There were, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there were no approved candidates for the leadership race. Am I doing okay so far?
Yeah, there was nobody that stepped up to I mean, the board set the parameters for what needed to be done for people to step up and run, and nobody came forward. I mean, I kind of understand that, in the sense that, it was, it was going to be an uphill battle. There's no doubt about it. It was not going to be easy. You're going to be pushing a rock up a hill and hoping it doesn't roll back on you. And, so it's a challenge for sure. It's not easy. If it were easy, then I think there'd be lots of people that would jump at the chance to be the leader. So I was there. The party decided that it was better to stick with me than to try and run another leadership contest, and so consequently, reality is that I'm still the leader, and I don't know how long that will be. We have obviously a leadership review coming up, so it'll be for the party to decide whether they want to keep me or find somebody new, and I think that's an open question at this point. So we'll see. Um, I hadn't anticipated being the leader, so I'm not going to be disappointed if they decide that they would rather have somebody new. That's fine. Uh, you know, uh, that's the way things work, and that's how politics works. So that's fine by me.
And just to be clear, you are now pending the leadership review, you are the permanent leader of the party. So unless the party goes, we want to have another leadership race, it's you.
Yeah, that's right. And as I say, I think, I'm always looking to see, if what the mood is in the party. I'm not there to stand in the way of the party. If the party thinks that there's somebody better that will lead the party, then I'm happy to look at stepping down even at some point. But the reality is I'm there now, and I speak for the party as the leader, and so I will continue to do that to the best of my ability as long as I'm there.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the mood of the party. It was, I think, for any party that wasn't the NDP or the UCP, it was a pretty challenging election. We saw parties like the Alberta Party, who had run a full slate in 2019. I think they had like 15 or 17 or some number that was not anywhere near a full slate. We saw a couple of the other parties not run a full slate. The Alberta Liberals did not run a full slate. And all of the parties that weren't the NDP or the UCP kind of took a bit of a shellacking. The vote share for the Alberta Liberals was 0.24%, which is the lowest in history. But, unique fixer-upper opportunities. So what's the mood of the party right now? How are things feeling coming off of that in a political environment that many argue is more polarized than it's been since Bible Bill?
Well, I agree with people when they say it's more polarized than it's been since probably since Bible Bill, all right. The I don't know if it goes back that far, but maybe not. But in any event, yeah, the mood of the party is upbeat. We're cautiously advancing. We know that we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. We are growing, not as fast as I would like to see it, but we are growing slowly. And even though the election's probably about 3.5 years away now, we need to continue to grow, and we'll continue to work at that. So I think the mood is positive, optimistic, but cautiously optimistic for sure.
Yeah. With cautious optimism, I'm curious how much of that cautious optimism is being tempered to some degree by branding's everything. And right now the federal Liberals are not seeing probably the success, the buoyancy that they'd like to see. We're seeing the Pierre Poilievre definitely does have a little bit of an upward trajectory. We just saw in the last week a very unfortunate introduction happen in Parliament. Now I think it's important to differentiate that wasn't Justin Trudeau. That was the speaker who invited the particular individual. But the Liberal brand, it seems like across the country, particularly in Alberta, is it's got a little bit of a tarnish on it. How does the Alberta Liberals plan to overcome that or deal with that?
Well, I have to start by disagreeing with your first statement. You said that branding is everything. I don't think branding is everything. I think truth and honesty is important. And so I know that the people have slagged the Liberal brand for a long time in Alberta, and that's worked to the advantage of both the UCP and the NDP. Neither of them particularly want the Liberals around. They both like to see the biggest ogre opposing them. So the UCP wants to point at the NDP, and the NDP wants to point at the UCP. They'd like to see my party and all the other parties, frankly, that are somewhere in the middle, pushed out of the system. So, but I think there have been people that said, look, we need to change the brand, we need to change the name of the party. But realistically, the party, you can change the name of the party. It's not going to change the people or our values. And as long as we've got those values, I think we need to defend those values and promote those values. They're good, strong values. They're good Alberta values, frankly. There's a reason why the Conservatives have slagged the Liberals, because they really know that it's the Liberals that could actually take over and run the province on a continual basis. I mean, the NDP were lucky in 2015. I don't see that happening again. And so, honestly, the NDP had the best possible scenario to win the last election. They had lots of money, tons and tons of money. They had, a base to work from in Edmonton. They have former premier running the show. They had the most extreme party they could ask for to run against, and they still couldn't get the ball over the goal line. So I don't see the NDP being able to form a government in Alberta anytime in the near future. I don't see the prospects improving. They're going to diminish in the future. And so if Albertans want to have a progressive party running the province, an open-minded, a party that's looking to the future, then the Alberta Liberals are that party. I know that message hasn't been getting across as much as I'd like to have seen it, but your show aside, it's not like the media beats their door down to get to us. I mean, part of the problem of that is, frankly, we don't have a member in the legislature. We really need to get our foot back in the door, so to speak. I understand why the mainstream media doesn't cover us. That if they covered us, they'd have to cover all the other parties that don't have anyone in the legislature either. But we've been around. We've been around since the start. We're planning on being around, and we're not going to change our values. So the important thing for us is to be honest and tell people exactly who we are. We're not trying to be something other than what we are. We've been straightforward, and so I think from that perspective, people should take that into consideration when they look at the brand and actually look at all the negative communications and the statements that have been made about the Liberals. Honestly, we haven't been in power in Alberta since about 1925, or somewhere around there. So it's been about a century since the provincial Liberals have been in power, and people don't realize that we're not the federal Liberals. It doesn't mean that we have a hate on for the federal Liberals. We will work with them. We believe that we should collaborate with everybody. That we need to find solutions that are going to work for Alberta. Our focus is Alberta and making sure that Albertans prosper and benefit and have opportunities. And that's what our focus is. Sometimes we agree with the federal Liberals. Sometimes we disagree with the federal Liberals. That's just the way it is. But we realize that or at least I realize, and I think our party realizes, that the federal Liberals have to worry about the whole country. They can't be completely focused on Alberta all the time, and we can't get our way all the time. That's part of being part of the Canadian family. And I really believe that we have to stay part of the Canadian family. I'm not sure that sentiment is shared by the UCP, for example, because I think that they're You know, they've got people that I would say are closet separatists in their party, and they certainly are pursuing policies that are, um, uh, you know, anti-Canada, frankly, and anti-cooperation with other provinces, and I don't think that's beneficial for Albertans in the long term. I mean, I know there's some people that think that we could go it alone. I frankly don't think that we would be successful if we go it alone. And we have to keep in mind that it's a long road. There's been times when Alberta has needed the help of other provinces. We've been buoyant and our economy has been strong for decades, but it might not always be that way. And a lot of the strength in our economy has been because, frankly, we've been sitting on the mother lode of oil that we just happen to have underneath the surface of the ground that we occupy as our territory. And so, you know, that there's a certain amount of luck involved in that. And I think that if we reach out and cooperate with other provinces and try and see things their way as well, that we will be benefiting from the cooperation, and working with them. I think they will be inclined to work with us. We've both the UCP and even the NDP, seem to want to pick fights with other provinces sometimes, and I don't think that's conducive to reconciliation. Frankly, between provinces. I say on Truth and Reconciliation Day, reconciliation shouldn't be confined to just our Indigenous peoples. I think we have to have reconciliation within the Canadian family.
I mean, you opened by disagreeing with the brand piece, so that makes me kind of curious. Is there the possibility of a name change?
Well, I think that issue is always being discussed within the party. I don't see any big movement towards that myself. There might be some advantages to that in the sense that some people that think that the name is toxic, for example, might be more inclined to get involved, I suppose. And there's some reason to believe that the Alberta Party got its impetus and startup because there were people that thought that we should have a party that has liberal values, but isn't carrying the liberal name because of the liberal brand. There's always going to be those people in Alberta that are not going to vote for the Liberals because of the name. Those people are probably lost to us no matter what, no matter if we changed our name or not. Our name may be a bit of an impediment to working with the other parties to some extent, but we'll continue to reach out to them and hope that we can find common ground and collaborate on policies that are beneficial to Albertans, because that's what's most important.
I mean, it's interesting that you bring up the Alberta Party, because that was one of my next questions. The migration of former Liberal leader candidates or former Liberal leaders has been fascinating to watch over the last couple of years. We saw Russ Sherman. I still can't do it without laughing a little bit. Attempt to run for the leadership of the UCP, and then run as a candidate in the last election. We saw, excuse me, we saw Kerry Condell, who ran against David Kahn in the preceding leadership race, and she went pretty much all in on the Alberta Party. She was probably, many would argue, one of the star candidates in the last election for the Alberta Party. So it seems like there's a fairly migratory element to the Alberta Liberals. One of the big speculative things, and I know this was part of the conversation in that 2017 leadership race, is would the Alberta Liberals ever absorb or team up with the Alberta Party? Is there any appetite for that? Do you see that as being a thing, or is that just people drinking too much coffee, speculating on what their favorite Alberta Poly fan fiction might look like?
Well, I'll never say never. I think that we would certainly work with the Alberta Party, towards trying to pursue policies that we agree on. And there is overlap there. There's no question. I mean, I talk to lots of people in the Alberta Party from time to time, in candidates forums, bumped into Barry Morishita at different events and things like that. And so, I don't hold any animosity against them. We're not entirely on all fours with them, but there's a fair bit of overlap there. There's no question about it. And I think a lot of their values are liberal values. Maybe not all of them, but they tend to be a little bit more to the right of us on the political spectrum, but not terribly that much to the right. And I think there's a lot of people in the Alberta Liberal Party that share a lot of this, the what I would call the small c conservative kind of values, fiscal responsibility and things like that. And so and conversely, I think there's people in the Alberta Party that have a lot of liberal values, frankly. So I wouldn't say that it would never work. I mean, I think there are some impediments to that. It's kind of like, well, can we come to some kind of an arrangement that would work for both parties? So both parties would, I think, have to, have some degree of buy into it. There's a certain amount of face saving. There's a certain amount of people, having their own silos as well. I think, I would like, I think, for example, in the last election, the Alberta Party, the Greens as well, and the Alberta Liberals were all in favor of some sort of proportional representation and reform of the electoral system. And I really think that that's important. What we have right now with the first past the post system, for example, is a system that basically means you're going to have a majority government from one party or the other for the next 4 years. And it's probably going to be majority UCP government, followed by a UCP government, followed by a UCP government, the way things are looking, because, as I said, I mean, I don't see the NDP being able to come out of the woodwork and take over government, because they had the perfect opportunity and they didn't succeed in the last election. So and what that effectively means is you've got a majority government which decides what to do. Like, all of a sudden, out of the blue, the UCP where Premier Smith was saying during the campaign, oh, we're not campaigning on pensions. Well, lo and behold, here we are, a few short months after the election, and pensions are back on the table. So, and there's no way to control the government from doing that kind of bait and switch, I guess, where they're not campaigning on it, and all of a sudden it's a big policy issue for them. A proportional representation system would likely result in more minority governments, but that's a good check and balance on the government that's the government of the day, and make sure that they don't go off the rails and do foolish things like try and move away from the Canada Pension Plan to the Alberta Pension Plan. I mean, there's much bigger issues, much more important issues to be dealing with in Alberta than the pension plan, frankly. It should not be the main issue on the table. We have lots of other issues. We have people that are living on the streets. We have huge problems with dealing with people's standards of living and just getting by in this province right now. That's, winter is coming. We need to deal with those kinds of bread and butter issues. We need to deal with, what do we do about utilities? How do we deal, our utilities, electrical costs in Alberta have skyrocketed. The UCP has not addressed that at all. There are, we have, tailings ponds leaking into, the drinking water of Albertans, and the UCP hasn't addressed that at all. So they've shoved these things under the rug, and at the same time, then they push forward an idea that, you know, the CPP has been functioning well. It's performed well, and it's not broke. We don't need to fix it. So deal with the issues that we need the government to deal with the issues that are top of mind for Albertans. And the pension plan is just not it.
I mean, it's interesting you bring up the electricity costs and the utility costs, and the UCP not doing anything, because there are people who are far smarter than I am who actually make a very compelling argument that they're probably not going to do anything about it, because they're the ones that caused it by allowing the economic withholding to happen. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. That could be a whole other episode. What's the What's the next step? I mean, you've listed off a bunch of issues, and I don't think that there's anybody. I mean, there's probably some people, but I think most people would agree the cost of living is a huge issue in the province of Alberta. Healthcare is a huge issue in the province of Alberta. Houselessness, homelessness, huge issues in the province of Alberta. Is there a plan? Like, how are the Alberta Liberals going to, and forgive me if this sounds harsh, but how are the Alberta Liberals going to make themselves relevant in that conversation?
Well, I agree. It's difficult when we don't have a member in the legislature. People don't come knocking on our door asking us for solutions. But I think, nevertheless, we'll keep, plugging away, keep, doing our best to talk about those issues, discuss them, listen to people, find solutions that'll work for Albertans. And as I say, it might mean that we collaborate with the Greens, or we collaborate with the Alberta Party, or whoever, in accomplishing those goals. But where our focus is on trying to do things that are going to improve the lives of Albertans, and focus on the real issues that are at hand, and not get distracted by issues that are not that important. Like the pension plan. I mean, we don't, like, the UCP is just making crazy decisions. I mean, the moratorium, or temporary moratorium, or suspension of the development of renewables. That's hugely a problem for us. We have to move towards the future, and that is just going to set us back. It's going to cause people not to invest in our province. That's just not good for us. So let's focus on those kinds of issues and deal with the real bread and butter issues for people, the things that we need to deal with in Alberta, and not get distracted by things that we don't need to get distracted by. Let's put it that way.
I mean, you brought up proportional representation. It's one of the, I think, challenges that political parties are going to have over the next few years, is because the UCP has done, particularly under Smith. I mean, I never thought, if you'd asked me 2 years ago if I would have said, oh, Jason Kenney, at least he had an even keel, I wouldn't have pictured myself saying that, yet here we are. By comparison, Jason Kenney had an even keel. One of, I think, the problems that most provincial parties are going to be navigating, though, is almost because so many of these mistakes are so extreme and so ludicrous. The pension plan is a good example. The renewables moratorium. One of my favorites is the Turkish Tylenol, because that was just such a dumb thing from start to finish. That was not only a bad idea, but it was badly executed. It's going to be very difficult for, I think, political parties to differentiate themselves from each other, because it's very, very easy to go, oh, that was some dumb things that Smith and the UCP did. But I think one of the questions that I really want to ask you is, what's the value proposition for the Alberta Liberals? Like, I'm going to give you the floor. What are the top 3 policies? And I'll even let you have proportional representation as one of those if you want. You can still have 3 more if you'd like to. But what are the top 3 policies? What are the top 3 solutions that the Alberta Liberals would bring to the table for the problems that Albertans are facing that aren't necessarily created by the UCP?
Well, I don't go around with carrying, these are the top three things we need to deal with in my head, to be frank. I think, to be fair, the value proposition that the Alberta Liberals bring to the table is a willingness to work with both sides. We believe that business has a role, and we believe labor has a role. The UCP is heavy in favor of business, particularly the oil and gas business, um, um, but doesn't seem to be too concerned about, making sure that, Albertans can transition to a new economy and deal with jobs over the long term. The NDP, on the other hand, seems to be focused a lot on the labor side and not so much on the business side, if I can, look at it from that perspective. So, the NDP has tried to get closer to being liberal, frankly, and look liberal in that vein, but they're, Rachel Notley's probably the right end of their spectrum. And so I just don't see that those parties are prepared to try and reach a balance that would meet the needs of Albertans and work with both business and labor to accomplish goals. So, we've always been the party of balance, going back to at least to Kevin Taft, I can say that much. And so, this is where we, I think, fit into the political equation, is that we need to have, in Alberta, we need to come together. We need to collaborate. We're going to find solutions if we can work together. If we're constantly dividing, constantly tearing each other apart, looking at adversity rather than any solutions, we're not going to get to the solutions. And so that's where I think that the Alberta Liberals fit into the equation. So that, and in sort of in a broader way. In terms of policies, I do think that you're right, that it's hard to distinguish from other parties, in the sense that we're worried about environmental damage. The NDP also is worried about environmental damage, for example. I think where the difference would be a bit more nuanced, in the sense that we might have different solutions than they would have. We might, I can't say that definitely on that particular topic, but I think that we have to look at, because we view things from a point of view of trying to balance the issues and balance everybody's interests, that we would come up with solutions that are not the same. We might have the same position on that particular item, and that I think that is part of the problem, is that people look at that and they go, well, the NDP's against that and you're against that. Are you MPs in favor of this and you're in favor of that? Yeah, well, we both have ideas on, maybe solving houselessness or homelessness, but how we would go about doing it isn't necessarily going to be the same as the way that they would. Having said that, as I say, I think the solutions come from working together and collaborating and trying to achieve the goal, rather than focusing on adversarial politics, in my view.
I got a couple other questions, and then I want to get you to talk about your upcoming AGM a little bit. There's a couple of new pieces that have emerged on the Alberta political scene, and while the essence of those pieces isn't necessarily new, the organization that is going on between those pieces is, I feel like I can get away using the word unprecedented here. And it's changing the conversation around politics in the province of Alberta. I'm talking about Take Back Alberta. So Take Back Alberta says that they don't have any particular political affiliation. It's very, very clear that they're running candidates for the UCP. They're going to be running candidates for school boards across the province. They've made it very, very clear that they want to take over the school boards. What's your reaction to sort of I struggle to even call it populist, because so much of what Take Back Alberta and their cohorts talk about is just straight up fabricated. They're importing issues from the United States that have no actual relevance to Alberta or Canada in order to get people outraged. What's your reaction to that?
Well, obviously, I'm concerned. I mean, I see, Take Back Alberta as taking Alberta backward. They're a throwback to the social credit, frankly. Alberta ditched the social credit in 1971 or 72, but here they are back again, social credit 2.0, with a different name, but essentially the same philosophy. And I don't see that as beneficial to Alberta in the future. I think it's not good for our reputation in Canada. It's not going to be good for our reputation across the world. People are going to see us as backward. I hear that from time to time. People snickering when I go somewhere else in Canada. Those Albertans. They're oh well, what they'll call us, but they and I don't think it's fair, because I don't think that most Albertans are there. And I'm left defending Alberta, but the perception is that Alberta is backward and looking backward instead of looking forward. Notwithstanding what the UCP tried to run on as their campaign theme. And we can't look backward. We have to look forward. We have to realize that the world's changing around us. We can't force the world to adapt to us. The world is way bigger than us, and we need to adapt to the world rather than the other way around. We can't afford not to adapt. In the long term, if we don't, we're going to suffer, economically, and that will hurt Albertans' prosperity. I look at other places where people have stuck to their guns on certain issues, like, for example, West Virginia and coal. I mean, they stuck. Coal was their thing. Coal still is their thing, and West Virginia is not prospering, and they're not prospering because they stuck to that. They didn't adapt, and that's unfortunate. And I do not want to see Alberta go down the same path. I think that oil and gas has been good for Alberta for a long time, but it might not be there in the future. There are definite steps that are being taken by the oil and gas industry to try and adapt, I think. I think that was, they realized that, and the previous CEO of Suncor even, I think, admitted it's as much, but the more recent CEO seems to be going hard on the oil and gas issue. And so, back to that as their main source of income, and, damn the torpedoes kind of approach. I think I know, we must adapt. If we don't, we're going to be suffering as a consequence.
Two other topics that I want to hit you on real quick before we get to the AGM. One of the things, there is a vilification of the education system that's going on at all levels of government right now, unfortunately. We're seeing people at the municipal level, at the provincial level, and certainly at the federal level, misrepresenting the education system, misrepresenting what's going on in Canadian and particularly Albertan classrooms. What, if any, message do you have, for teachers who are the targets of this, I would quite frankly call it slanderous, misinformation and disinformation, but also to the people who have been sort of whipped up into a fervor by folks like Take Back Alberta, who are importing these issues, who believe, one of the observations that came out of the Million March was there were probably a lot of parents there who were there in good faith, who drank some of the free Kool-Aid that Mr. Parker and co were handing out, and are now walking away with concerns that, oh my gosh, the kitty litter boxes in the schools are there so that if kids want to identify as cats, they can. It's for mass shootings. The kitty litter's there for mass shootings, so kids have a place to pee. And I think that just speaks to how grossly misrepresented the issue is. So what would you say to teachers who are the targets of this, and what would you say to people who are getting sucked into these misinformation and disinformation campaigns?
Wow, that's a big topic. I am one of my daughters is a teacher, so I feel for the teachers. I really am concerned about the misinformation that's going out there. I'm really concerned about how people want to stigmatize and marginalize people. There's always going to be differences of the way people want to live in Alberta and Canada and the world, frankly. We as a party, the Liberals believe in promoting individual liberties and pursuing people being able to pursue their authentic selves, frankly. We don't get much credit for it. The NDP tries to take credit for the GSAs, but that was a liberal initiative. So we've always worked with people and tried to help them be themselves. So from to answer your question with respect to the teachers, of course we feel for the teachers. Well, I mean, I do not want to turn teachers into snitches. That seems to be what their objective is. I mean, kids have to feel safe, and if their teachers are the Gestapo reporting to their parents on them, the kids are not going to feel safe. I don't think that that's the role of teachers to be snitches for the parents. I think parents do need to be involved in their kids' lives, and I honestly think that if parents are involved with their kids' lives and treat their kids with dignity and respect, that the kids will feel comfortable discussing these issues with the parents. I mean, but they might want to run that past a teacher first, or because frankly, it's they're a little bit further away, a little bit at arm's length, and so it's a very sensitive, very complex issue. I think that we have to approach it with sensitivity and realize the complexity. I mean, I've got kids, and they're all far past school age now. But well, I don't know, maybe not that far, but a few years past school age, and so we have to remember, children are not the property of their parents. Children are their own individuals. We have to be sensitive to the concerns. We have to, but we have to listen to parents too. It's a balancing that has to be achieved. And we've got people out there right now that are, whipping up misinformation and making it sound like there's this attack on kids that's happening in the schools. And it's just not true. It's absolutely not true. And, so we will do the best we can to continue to say that's not accurate and fight against it as best we can. But, without somebody in the legislature, they don't come and ask us what our opinion is very often. But that's our view. We're very concerned about those kinds of things happening. We cannot have that. It's all it's going to do is lead to kids having more mental health issues, more mental health disorders, more suicides, frankly, of young people. And that is not where we need to go. We need to deal with there's a big mental health issue right now in our schools. Some of it has to do with the pandemic and being separated from their friends and not being able to social, have social events and things like that, and just hang out. There are lots of those kinds of things. Those are the things we need to deal with, and being insensitive to you know concerns that kids have, and frankly thinking on them is not going to solve the problem. It's just going to make things worse.
I'm curious. I always do this where I'm like, oh, one more question, and then I have another one.
That's
So
okay. I'm here.
it's kind of my brand. Are classroom sizes on the Alberta Liberals radar at all? Because that's certainly one of the biggest issues that parents who are not going down the rabbit holes, continue to raise. It's certainly an issue that students are continuing to raise. It's certainly an issue that teachers are continuing to raise. Would the Alberta Liberals do something to, I don't know, track class sizes again and then maybe do something about it?
Well, yes, I mean, that was, yeah, I guess maybe you didn't read our policies, but in the last election, or didn't read them carefully enough. We have for several elections been in favor of reducing class sizes. We need to get those down. We cannot have it. I mean, adding 5 more kids may sound like it's not that big of a deal, but it means the difference between kids getting enough attention and kids not getting any attention because there's just too much chaos in the classroom. We've got in the school where my daughter teaches, there's lots of kids there that come from traumatic backgrounds, and non-English speaking backgrounds, and so they need ESL classes, and they need those kinds of supports, and they just can't get those supports when the class sizes are 30 kids, or sometimes pushing up towards 40 kids. I mean, it's just not conducive to learning. It's not conducive to any kind of organization. It just creates chaos in the classroom. So we're going to have to deal with that for sure. It's I don't know what else I can say about it. It's a really important issue.
I couldn't agree more. I did, in fact, read your policy book, but I was just betting on the possibility there might be a few folks listening or watching this who didn't. So I thought I'd throw it in there. You've got an AGM coming up. What's on the agenda? What are the details for the AGM? Is it held in a secret location that is only going to be announced 2 hours before the event starts? That's a Take Back Alberta joke. What's the plan?
Okay. No, fair enough. No, it's in Edmonton, in Crestwood. So for the people that are in Edmonton, that's the part of town we're in. It's on October the 14th. And it's as I say, it's I think I don't know if I mentioned this before we started on air or not. I mean, it's a start of moving towards rejuvenating the party. Really, from the standpoint of the membership, we haven't gotten together before this and after the election, and so we'll discuss these issues. All of the issues that you talked about are going to be on the floor at this meeting, and I'll see, for example, what are people thinking about cooperating with other parties. I mean, I don't expect that they're going to tell me that we shouldn't. But there might be something coming up about the name change. There are always issues that we're being discussed, and we always look at these issues with an open mind and hopefully a new perspective, our perspective, and try and figure out how we can push the ball forward and get it over the goal line ourselves. I mean, we are facing challenges. There's no doubt about it. But one thing we could do is run away, but that's not us. We've been around. We'll be around, and so it's just a question of how do we get from where we are to where we need to be.
Fair enough. Who can attend? Is it open to anybody? Are you selling memberships at the door? Do you have to have your membership for a certain period of time beforehand? What's the cost of admission?
I I think it's open to everybody, to be honest. But I haven't actually checked that out. Certainly we've focused on getting Alberta Liberals there. And it's our AGM. There's some elections there, and obviously you have to be a member to vote in the elections for people that would be on the executive. And so I personally have not focused on the cost of it or much on anything else. I've been focusing on trying to get the people who are enthusiastic about improving the lives of Albertans to get involved, sit on the executive and rejuvenate the party. Frankly, I mean, we need more young people involved. I'd like to, I don't know that they can just jump to the top of the heap of the executive necessarily, but we do need to work on getting younger people involved, and we're doing that. We've had some younger candidates in this last election, and we just need to keep working to get those people involved because they're Alberta's future, so I'm focused on those kinds of issues rather than the cost of admission. I confess.
I'm just looking at while you were talking, I decided to look it up on your website, and it actually answered a question for me. Tickets are $25, and I was curious if there were going to be snacks. In fact, there's more than snacks. There's a sandwich, lunch, beverages, and snacks. So for $25, I mean, that's not a bad deal. I'm curious. I'm just gonna, as we're having the conversation, I'm just curious how much memberships cost. Oh, they're only $10. So for $35, yeah, for $35 you can attend the AGM. You can get yourself are the sandwiches good?
Hey, I'm more focused on other issues than the food, but I'm sure that the people that are organizing it for the party have taken all that into account, and the sandwiches will be good. I'm confident that they will be, even though I've had absolutely nothing to do with that part of the organization.
You've got a leadership review in this meeting as well, so I hope you're able to stand behind that promise. You don't want to mess with people's sandwiches.
Yes, that's true. And I honestly don't know. I mean, maybe there's a movement out there to oust me as leader. It's possible, I suppose.
Via the sandwiches.
But as I said, I mean, that's up for the party to decide. And I'm there. I've been there. I expect I'll be there in the future. So the Alberta Liberals are bigger than me.
There we go. Mr. Roggeveen, I want to ask, are there anything we didn't cover, any thoughts that you want, any messages that you want people to hear? And then I have one more small question after that.
I off the top of my head, no, there's nothing in particular I think that we really need to get across that we didn't discuss. I think, we've gone through all the reasons why we have problems and what problems we need to deal with in Alberta. So have at her with your final question, or possibly final question.
It's a two-parter. Do you have a favorite type of sandwich, and do you have a favorite type of snack?
Favorite type of sandwich and a favorite type of snack. Yeah.
This is the crux.
I really don't. I think I like variety. So some days tuna sandwiches are good, and other days beef is good. I've had veggie sandwiches too. I mean, honestly, it probably varies from day to day on sandwiches. Favorite snack. My wife would probably say that's popcorn because I eat all of her popcorn. But yeah, I'm not even sure that popcorn would necessarily be my favorite snack. I really don't categorize things that way. Just like I don't categorize these as my top three policies. I try and look at the big picture and deal with things as they are. Sometimes, popcorn's the only snack available. Just just saying there, honey. So there's a reason why I would gravitate towards my wife's popcorn. Anyway, yeah, I guess if I sat down, I might be able to say, yeah, I do this more than anything else, but I don't keep those kind of statistics. They're not important to me.
Fair enough. Well, I hope that we'll see either by the official Alberta Liberals Twitter page or by yours a full and comprehensive inventory of the snacks provided at the AGM, because now I'm just wildly curious. John, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, to tolerate some of the questions, and to share your vision for where you want the Alberta Liberals to go. On a somewhat personal note, I want to say I respect the hell out of the fact that you were willing to weigh in and condemn some of the rhetoric that we're seeing coming from the far right fringe, because I don't think it's representative of Albertans. And the one thing that we've heard consistently on the show is from the communities that are being targeted and affected by these fools, what they need from people more than anything else is allies speaking up. So props for being willing to do that, sir.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I mean, it's my pleasure to talk to you today, and I'm sure that 15 minutes from now we're no longer talking. Something will dawn on me that I should have mentioned, but we never really got a chance, and we never really get a chance in this province to discuss what is the real vision for the future, and that. When you mentioned vision back a little bit there, that came to mind. We really need to buckle down and look at where Alberta needs to go and how we get there, and that's that's a topic for an entire show probably, and not just with me there, maybe a round table. But I really appreciate you giving me the chance to talk to you and hopefully reach out to Albertans and give them an idea about what the Alberta Liberals are all about and what I'm about. And thanks again.
Well, if you survive the leadership review, I feel like you might. Would love to have you back on the show in the future to have some of those bigger conversations. Again, just thank you so much for being willing to take the time, sir.
No problem, and I'll try and take notes on the snacks for you.
Perfect. And that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, we would love nothing more than if you thought about signing up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to produce this kind of content. Whether you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, in which case maybe leave a review and a rating, or whether you're watching it on one of our streaming platforms, we want to say a big thank you to everybody who is part of the Breakdown's audience. And as always, take care of each other and keep the conversation going.